allowing myself to flow and be taken by whatever is happening in the moment without resistance. And that's a sort of fundamental part of this work also, that I resist nothing, I surrender to everything, and then acting becomes effortless. It's not about doing something, it's about learning to be still and learning to be open and available and passive. Passive meaning, porous and available, allowing things to work through me.
Andrei, it's so great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's a great pleasure. Where are you at the moment? Because you're traveling between Vienna and the UK.
Yeah, I'm in Vienna right now. I just came back from London so a few days ago, so I'm back in Vienna. I hope this background is okay because it's the only place in my apartment I've got right now to do this.
No, that's fine. That's wonderful. It's so minimalistic.
Yes, yeah. Well, not intentionally so. I'm still in the process of organizing the apartment, so I'm kind of it's still a bit bare at the moment, but I'm getting there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, but I spoke to an actor a while ago, and we were talking about the Viennese apartments and how they are actually, sometimes these old apartments have so many wonderful little, they so, I don't know what the English word is, but they're so a little bit magical. I know magical is such a cliche word, but it is,
Absolutely. They have a lot of character, I would say.
Yeah.
There's this wonderful character. The one I'm in is it's not so old, but again, it has a lot of there's some kind of spirit here which I really like. Not huge, but there's something about it which is very homey. It very much makes you feel at home, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. When I came to Vienna, well, actually years ago, I studied interior design and I studied the history of interior design, and the Art Deco era really fascinated me, and it was an era that I didn't know much of, but while I was studying it, I just absolutely found all the wonderful artistic sort of things in it that I found so beautiful. Yeah. And coincidentally, I'm living in the Art Deco building. So I think,
oh, wow, how nice.
So I believe places, we are, we end up in places where we're supposed to be. So
yeah, I agree with that. And I do love the architecture, in this city. I mean, it's very different from the UK. I do like the UK's architecture as well, but of course in Europe it's very different. Obviously, it's a very obvious thing to say, but there's a certain kind of energy in it which is very different from the energy in UK, for example, buildings and architecture. I mean, I lived in Poland for many years also, and that again has its own unique kind of feel, unique kind of spirit in terms of the place itself and the architecture and the way buildings are kind of aligned, the way they come together. It's really interesting, actually. That creates the energy of a place also, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, and exactly that what you're talking about now, because a lot of people, a lot of artists are really attracted to Vienna.
Yeah, not surprisingly. Yeah, because I think it does have that sense of energy about it, that sense of creative energy, which attracts a lot of people, and it makes it a really interesting place to live.
Yeah. But you've been, you can talk about this because you've been all over the world. I mean, you've lived in Australia, you lived in Poland and in the UK, and now in Vienna. So you can talk about the different aspects, the different feel about a place.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in Australia, but I left, when I was quite young still. And again, that is a very different it's a country with a very different feel because it's very big, right? It's about the same size roughly as the US, North America, but with far fewer people, right? There's, I think now about, I don't know, 30 million, 20, 30 million, something like that. And it has a very different energy, a very different feel about it. It's very hot for a start.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of space. And that sense of space actually produces a particular energy, and it allows people, it sort of influences the way people are in their lives, right? Influences their personalities, it influences culture. The sense of space, it's very different from, say, New York City, which is tightly crammed with, millions of people, and all of the architecture mostly is upwards, it's vertical. Whereas, you can compare it to Los Angeles, right? Which is, again, has a lot more space, is not so vertical, is much flatter and much more spread. And that's kind of what it's like in Australia, right? The things
like
are spread
South
out.
Africa. Yeah, I understand that,
Right.
because it's like South Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it does affect people's energy, people's personalities, the way people are, the way they react to each other, right? Right down to the volume of voice, which is a strange thing.
No, I wanted to say now, this is true.
Yeah, that, there is a tendency when there is, look at people who live in the mountains, right? When you look at people, singers from mountain cultures, it tends to be much more sort of visceral, open-throated, higher volume singing. And, logically, you might say, well, they're calling from one mountain to another, right? But there's something about the altitude, there's something about the distance, there's something about the way people are spaced out from each other that kind of influences and produces this particular sound, which is, I find, really fascinating. We find that in the culture of people who live in the mountains in Poland, right? And Polish mountains are not that high, and yet there is a particular culture of singing there, which is exactly what I just described, right? Which is that very open-throated, fully kind of belly engaged singing, which is unobstructed and has a particular, very unique quality, which is really, I find really fascinating. So yeah, it's interesting how space affects how people interact, how they speak, the volume of their voice, and culture in general. I mean, are you from South Africa?
Yeah, I'm from South Africa, but I have to tell you that I have to tell my mum that you said this, because my brother-in-law, he talks very loud, but he grew up on a farm, and we always said jokingly, it's because of that, because if he calls somebody on the farm, it's usually by shouting.
Right.
And
right.
in a conversation, he talks very loud, and we jokingly said it's because he's from a farm. But it's true what you're saying. It's like that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating.
And the African singers as well. The traditional African singers,
right.
they have exactly that, what you're talking about. Really coming from the soul almost.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
But now in acting, do you think that it has an effect on actors as well? Not just singers, but in the acting profession. Really?
Absolutely. The culture we grow up in obviously affects the art that gets made also, because we can't divorce culture from art, obviously, and we can't divorce the culture we grow up in from the kind of actor that we become, which is not to say that we don't change. Of course we do, but we carry the imprint of our backgrounds with us, and that's what makes actors unique. And within that culture, of course, you have many variations, right? It's not that everybody is the same. That would be crazy. But there is a certain kind of, like I say, imprint that is the starting point for each one of those actors. And how that creatively manifests later, we don't know, right? But I'm just saying that there is a sense that we sort of bring our pasts with us, and not just our immediate past, right? But our ancestry and the collective unconscious and everything that influences us, which is in large part recognized in the work that we do in this Demidov work, right? Something that Demidov was very aware of, that we are influenced by forces greater than our conscious minds can even grasp or hold on to. And that this is the seat of our creativity. In the subconscious is the seat of our creativity. And that, I actually believe that all artists create out of the sense of stillness and silence through which something is working, which is greater than us. It's still us, right? But when I say us, I mean the sort of defined us that we take ourselves to be. So this is a sort of fundamental, it's not really a principle, but it's a fundamental kind of part of the work that we do, is that from the very beginning, from the first day of training, the actor is taken straight to the subconscious, which makes this work very different from every other approach to acting. And we perhaps a little bit arrogantly believe that it is a revolution in actor training because it looks at the world very differently, the world of acting very differently. It looks through a different lens, different prism. And it is focusing on, first of all, freedom and spontaneity, giving ourselves freedom to surrender to what comes up, and reinforcing the faith in the actor's own talent, rather than trying to tear the actor down and rebuild them, which is a crazy notion, which even to this day still goes on in many drama schools, right?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask you also about, that we say that it's the background and, your culture and everything, the influence that, and I talk many times when I talk to artists and they tell me, oh, I'm self-taught, or I'm, most of the things, it came from within me. It was, I decided to do this, or sometimes it's I spoke to an artist who quit art school because they wanted him to, they said his drawings is too childlike and it's too naive. And they wanted him to do some serious work, and he just didn't want to do that. And he stepped out and he did his own thing. So institutions, do they sometimes kill that, that spirit, that art that comes from the soul?
Very often. And it's not really their fault to a certain degree, because they don't know any better. In my experience working in drama schools, there's a certain insecurity in the acting teacher, which is covered by a layer of pretended confidence, but actually many times, I'm generalizing, right? Not every acting teacher, but certainly from my experience, that they're projecting all of their issues onto the student and making the student wrong. And many acting teachers, even to this day, think it's their job to point out all the mistakes, right? Wrong, 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 before the actor even opens their mouth, wrong. And in this way, we kill the most precious thing that the actor has, which is faith and trust in their own talent, in their own technique, in their own creativity, in their own creative individuality. It's very easy to kill an actor's faith in themselves. What's not easy is to rebuild it, is to reinforce it, is to draw it out again. And, you know, it depends on the school, obviously, and depends on the teacher. So again, I'm not saying this happens everywhere, but certainly in my experience, I've witnessed it many times. And, you know, actors come out of drama schools kind of going on to become either successful despite the school, or because they found some other way of accessing their creativity. But the fundamental principle should always be first do no harm, right? The same as a doctor's oath. That's what we should be working with. First, do no harm. And if you can't do that, you should not be teaching acting. And because it's a very delicate, creative endeavor. And in this work, in the Demidov work, like I said, we start by taking the actor straight to the subconscious, but at the same time, we don't believe it's our job to point out the mistakes, but to support the actor's own faith and trust. And the more that grows, those mistakes, so-called, disappear on their own. It's not, there's a wonderful story in this huge book of Demidov, which I've told quite a few times before, but I love it because it kind of encapsulates Demidov's approach and philosophy of pedagogy. And the story of, I think it's a German kind of tale of a town of fools who build a house, but they build it without windows or doors. And so they build a tunnel under to get inside, but it's completely dark inside. So what do? They decide that they're going to get rid of the darkness by taking in big sacks and filling the sacks with darkness and taking them out and emptying the darkness outside. So they do this all day and all night. Of course, darkness doesn't disappear. But then this hero figure arrives, goes in, sees the problem, and lights a candle. And this is what Demidov is telling us, right? That you can't get rid of the darkness by saying wrong, 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 because there will just be more darkness that comes to take its place, and even stronger darkness. But what you can do is bring a candle, and the darkness disappears on its own. And I love this story because it resonates so deeply with the philosophy of loving the person you're working with. And everything we are doing is done through love and support. And it's not to say that we don't point the actor towards something that they could do better, right? But you're pointing out one thing, possibly, that actually is the cause of everything else. And do it in a way where the actor doesn't feel threatened or criticized or judged, but lift them up. Keep lifting them up until the wind catches them and they're sailing on their own. And that's one of the big differences, of course. There are many differences between this work and, let's say, all the other permutations that are based in Stanislavski. I'm not sure if you know Stanislavski, but
no, I don't.
He was a very big.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking that this really, we're talking about drama now, but this really can apply to any form of art. Because if I think of the young musicians that I spoke to, or in many forms of art, the one thing that they always or it's always a concern to them is that there are so many of us, and the industry is so filled with musicians or filled with pianists. How do I do my thing? And I think it comes back to this, that you're saying that it's also from the educational institution where they need to be valued, and they need to understand their value to be able to go out into the world and be that artist, that specific artist, because like you say, you've got the background. There's so many factors that make you them so unique, and they need to understand that.
Yeah. And we come back to the question, why do you want to be a musician? Why do you want to be an actor? Is it because you want a job, or is it because it's your passion and it's what you want to do? We don't, in this work, we are not preparing people for an industry. That happens as a byproduct of doing the work, right? First of all, focus on who you are, discovering who you are as an artist. You, not him or her, you, your individual voice. And everything flows from that. But sadly, in the culture we live in mostly, we look through the wrong end of the telescope, right? It's about how do I give me something to make me successful quickly. Well, do the work first, and everything follows from that. But if you're looking, first of all, at I want to be a famous actor, well, okay, there's no judgment there, but I think you're going to find that it's a very rocky path, and you might do it, you might not. But I always come back to that fundamental question: why do you want to do this? Mm-hmm. And if it's through a love of it, then follow that love, follow it wherever it goes, and work. Explore who you are as an artist and do the work. And what flows from that work is everything else, right? It's not in my hands. It's not in my hands. It's like going into an audition. And if you go into an audition wanting a job, you're getting in your own way. If you go into an audition trying to second guess what they want, and trying to please, again, you're getting in your own way, you're interfering. If I go into an audition thinking of it as an opportunity to show my work, to show what I do, and whether you like it or not is not up to me, that's out of my hands. Whether I get the job or not is not up to me, so why should I worry about that? It's an opportunity to show what I do. It's an opportunity to show my work. And when you think about it that way, you are not giving away your artistic integrity. I'm not talking about being arrogant, right? Or
no, I understand exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Then it's a different view of the world. And in fact, I can't remember the actor's name now, but very famous actor said something along similar lines, right? And when he had that revelation, he said he never stopped working when he was going into auditions. Because there is a sense of ownership, right? There's a sense of ownership. It's not that I don't make mistakes or that I'm, or that I'm arrogantly dismissing the people I'm auditioning for. It's about where my home is and where my focus is and where my creative individuality wants to live. And that's where I want to live. And then people are seeing the truth of what I'm doing. And whether they hire me or not, it's not my business. I might need the job, right? But if that's where my focus is when I go into the room, they can read that. They can sense it.
Well, yeah, do you know, a while ago, probably a year or so ago, I spoke to a young opera singer, and she said, and I always remember this because I found it for her at that age, that she realized that. She said she goes into an audition, she prepares, and she enjoys the preparation for it, and then she goes and auditions, and if she doesn't get the part, she always thinks, well, I've had this opportunity to learn the work, to learn this piece of work or whatever. And then she sees it that way. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, because now you don't put that pressure on yourself to think, right, I have to get this part.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And and you go in, you do your work. It's a wonderful opportunity to show what you do and what you've been working on, and then you walk away. And the rest of it is not up to you. I might get it, I might not, but that's a wonderful attitude by that musician, right? That it's been a great opportunity for me to work on a piece of music or work on a piece of text and to facilitate my creative process, and a great opportunity that these people are providing me with to go into a room and show my work, and then I walk away. And it's a much healthier also attitude, right? Because we are not then constantly judging, because we know actors hear the word no a lot, and we have to get used to the fact that it's not a judgment on us as a person, right? Or it's not a judgment on our talent. It may just be that they were seeing something different that they wanted for that particular part, and that's fine. But that's not up to me. It's completely out of my hands. So why should I worry about it?
But does it also come back to then the fact that the value that the actor puts on himself or herself, that reflects then?
Yes, well, it can do. I mean, again, we come back to the thing that we started with about the actor's faith or the artist's faith in their own talent. And that when we learn that we are surrendering to something larger than ourselves, let's say, then we realize that it's not about my ego or my personality, right? That it's the faith to leave myself open and allow something to work through me, so that sort of sense of judgment or criticism or whatever, we sort of become bulletproof in a way, because it's not about my small ego or my small personality. That what I'm opening myself to are forces much larger than myself that I'm allowing to work through me. So how can I be offended by, do you see what I mean? How can I be offended by any criticism? It's not me, it's not my ego. And I always say, that acting is not an egotistical, pursuit. In fact, it's the opposite. It's one of the most generous things we can do if we are working from that point of view, because we are saying to people, I'm allowing myself to transform into somebody, and then holding that somebody up for people to see and say, look at this. This is a human being, warts and all, in all of its shades and varieties, from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I'm allowing myself to experience the feelings that person is experiencing, the thoughts, right? The physical sensations, the impulses and desires. And in a sense, allowing myself to be sacrificed at the foot of this person, and showing that to an audience and saying, look here, this is a human being. So it's not about ego, it's about, it is an ultimate act of generosity that I'm allowing myself, if you like, to be a vessel for that person to appear. And for the short amount of time that person exists, to connect with an audience, but doing it very humbly and with a great sense that it's not about me, that somehow I'm a vessel for what works through me.
Oh, I understand what you mean, yeah. But I read also you have this wonderful quote on your website where you say the role, I have to read this, but the role of the artist is to transmit to humanity the deepest experience of reality. And that is so powerful. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this applies to all forms of art, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why the work that the Demidov work, yes, it's an acting technique, but it's not only about acting, right? There's something else going on there, which is because Demidov himself had a deep understanding of the creative process. And that's universal. If you take it out of the context of acting, that understanding of how the creative process functions is universal. And you're absolutely right. It applies to any artist, painter, writer, singer, musician, whatever it might be, is accessing something which is working through them. I think it was Mozart who said he writes as if in a lively dream. He wrote, rather, as if in a lively dream. The whole thing is there. The whole composition is there, and he's simply transcribing it, and then he wakes up, right? So Pushkin also said similar things. The Russian writer Pushkin, right? Dostoevsky also said similar things. All great artists, that's why I was saying that all great artists are accessing something much more vast than their own conscious minds. So that's why it's a misunderstanding to say that, to kind of get tangled up with your own ego about art. Because there is something higher, whatever you want to call it, right? The unconscious, the subconscious, God, creativity, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But we know for a fact that there are forces that influence us, right? Most of the decisions we make on a daily basis are unconscious.
Yeah.
We think we walk around in the world making choices all the time, right? But things arrive to us, and either we surrender to them or we don't. So that's our training in this work, is to learn to surrender to the first urge, to the first impulse, the first reaction that comes to us, because that contains the kernel of the truth. It's exactly what I meant to say. It's exactly what I meant to do. And of course, in life, we very rarely surrender to anything fully.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it be despair or joy. When was the last time we fully surrendered to joy? And it's. I'm not saying it's wrong, right? It's natural. It's cultural. It's the way we exist in the world. And it's a defense mechanism, right? Because we don't want to offend people. We want to get through life in one piece, right? We want to get on with each other. So there are things I won't say, right? Or things I won't do. So it's understandable. However, for an artist, that's not so useful, to be constantly putting the brakes on, rather than opening myself and allowing myself to surrender fully to everything that comes to me, right? Because on stage or on film, I don't want to get through the play in one piece, right? If I'm playing Hamlet, I want to feel the fullness of that passion and anger and rage and love and hatred or whatever it might be. Fully experience it. Otherwise, I'm not Hamlet, right? I'm somebody pretending to be Hamlet from the street. So we've kind of lost that ability to surrender fully to things that arrive to us. And so our work is very much not about learning to do something, but learning not to do, actually. Learning to let go. And in this way, there is a sort of, I see this connection in this work with the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, right? Or effortless action. Allowing myself to flow and be taken by whatever is happening in the moment without resistance. And that's a sort of fundamental part of this work also, that I resist nothing. I surrender to everything, and then acting becomes effortless. It's not about doing something. It's about learning to be still and learning to be open and available and passive. Passive meaning porous and available, allowing things to work through me.
But do you think, because it sounds simple, but I don't think it is, because I think for young actors, I would assume young actors coming out of acting school, having that pressure of, this person's got a job already and I'm not there yet, and I didn't get this part. So for them to sit back and rethink this must be very difficult.
Yes. And, I always say that this work is not going to be for everybody, right? Mm. Again, question first is, why do you want to do this? Do you just want to be successful? And I don't believe that anybody just wants to be successful, right? Even if that's what they might think. Very often I see two kinds of ambition for actors who come to this work. One is, as I said before, just give me some tools that are going to make me successful. The other are people who feel a lack. They feel a hole, that what they've been doing isn't working, or they're frustrated, and sometimes they can't articulate even why, but they want to go deeper. And now, there's no judgment on either of those. Good luck to you. It's just that I'm more interested in working with the latter, right? Those people who want to explore something and want to go more deeply and understand, as I said earlier, that to look through the telescope the other way, to see the bigger picture. And if you invest in your own artistry, if you invest in who you are, exploring how far you can go as an artist, everything will flow from that. If you start with the idea, and many drama schools have this approach that the last year of training is all about how to get a job, right? Headshots and showcases and agents and all of that. I'm not saying that's not important, don't get me wrong. It's just that I don't think that's where the primary focus should be. Process first. Focus on your process, focus on your artistry, focus on discovering who you are as an artist and being the best artist you can be. And there's no finish line, right? We never stop learning. That never, the gate never closes. I'm always discovering for as long as I'm active as an actor or an artist, we are discovering. Otherwise, what's the point? All I'm suggesting is that it's a shift of focus. When I focus on, when I focus on my artistry and going as deeply as I possibly can into that, then I start to get noticed, right? Then somebody is saying, I go into an audition and I know how to deal with that audition, and I know how to prepare, know how to surrender. And that's when people are seeing the truth. If I'm preparing myself and I don't even know who I am as an artist, and I'm constantly preparing myself just for auditions, or I want to get an agent, or I want this or that, okay, it might or it might not. And good luck to you if it does. All I'm suggesting is that I feel culturally we are looking through the wrong end of the telescope. We measure success in a completely ludicrous way. I just want to get on the television, right? There's nothing wrong with having the ambition of wanting to work. All actors want to work. I'm just suggesting that we are looking at things the wrong way. And we've lost, I think, the sense of love for the process and discovery of who we are, not just in art, but in many spheres. Learning, right? Learning to go deeper into whatever I do, downwards, not sideways. And I feel that's why I feel this work is a revolution. But again, it's not going to be for everybody. There are different types of people, right? There are different types of actor. There are different types of people. There are people with different, different thoughts, different attitudes, different approaches. So, but I'm interested in working with those who do want to go somewhere, and I'm not worried so much about how successful they're going to be or are they going to get a job, because getting a job for me is a consequence, is a byproduct of having done the work.
Well, I think this technique really, if I just think of the ballet world, for example, my two children trained in classical ballet. And I remember when they were little, when they were younger and they were in the school, it was all about, you have to do this to get to upper school. You have to do this to get into a good school. And I always thought, don't let the next school be the platform. Let the art be the sort of the incentive.
Right.
And I think it's not just in the ballet world. It might be in many other fields, musical theater or wherever where that is the case, where these young artists are not really given the opportunity to do what you're talking about exactly. I think this. I would love for this technique to be, in all the schools or all the education systems where they train artists in all different forms.
Yeah. Me too. Because I see the results, right? I see that it works, and I see that, I see that also that Demidov understood. I mean, he came from a theatrical family, but he trained first as a psychiatrist at Moscow University. And he was also very interested in Eastern and Western esoteric practices, right? More kind of mystical practices. And also he was a serious yoga practitioner from a young age, right? So he was bringing all of these different strands of knowledge to bear on his work with actors, and developed this technique over about 30 years. So he had a very deep understanding of various approaches, right? Eastern and Western approaches, as well as his own training as a psychiatrist and psychologist. So he understood better than most how the psyche functions, but also the subconscious was the most important revelation, let's say, that he. I mean, it was well known, right, that the subconscious is important, but how you get there was what made his work different, because Stanislavski, the big name in theatre of the 19th, early 20th century, who he worked with, was trying to get to the subconscious through the conscious mind. And Demidov saw that that was a mistake. So he figured out how to take the students straight to the subconscious and allow that subconscious to flow through them and to do what it wants with them, right? To provide the source of inspiration which all actors are trying to achieve. So it's interesting, right? But I think you're absolutely right that as I say, it's applied to acting, but it's sort of before any discipline. It's about how the creative process works more broadly. And so I agree that it would be useful in many spheres, in many disciplines, not just acting.
Absolutely.
All,
Yeah.
all great, like I said, all great artists work like that anyway, whether they consciously understand it or not. It's not that it's a new invention. It's just that Demidov understood how to kind of formalize it and in a technique for actors.
Yeah, but I wonder sometimes if it's not this, if you want to be an actor, you have to go to this school, and this is the best school, and this is the best training, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do that. And that, it's sort of in society already fixed that you have to go these certain paths. And then sometimes you find people who don't go that path, but they're still successful, that they sort of tapped into themselves. Not that I say training is not important. I think it is important, but sometimes you find also artists who tell me that, oh, I've only started when I was 11, or I only started, playing the piano when I was 16. They tend to have a different path, because I think they've established already what they wanted and why they wanted it. Then they have a different motivation for going, and they find a different path for developing.
Yeah. I think that's very true. And we used to, when I was teaching, for example, at drama schools in London, we have kids coming from straight out of high school and auditioning, and very often we would say they might have talent, but not really much in terms of life experience. So sometimes we would just say, take a year and go and travel, or enjoy yourself, explore something of life for a year, and then come back and apply again. Because you're right that there is a sense, it's not that they couldn't have benefited, but we are, as actors, drawing on not just kind of raw talent, but what that talent is connected to, which is what is speaking through us. And that is also our experiences, right? Our experience of life, our ability to intuitively understand what a particular character is going through, in order to be able to absorb that and transform into that person. So that sense of, if you're 16, 17, of course you've had experiences, but what kind of experiences, right? Yeah. So it's an interesting thing that the more kind of experience we gain, the more it also fires our imagination, our creative imagination. So that's why I think it's also an important part of it, that we come back to that point that I never stop learning. I never stop being curious. I never stop absorbing, perceiving what's happening around me, and allowing myself to be filled by it. So I think it is, you're right, it is an important thing that we have a sense of, it's not about really maturity, but experience of the world, right? As well as experience of the inner world, because we can't separate those two things. One affects the other.
Yeah. But you yourself, how did you get into acting? Did you start at a young age already, or did you know the interest already at a young age?
Yeah, I was always interested. I was involved in music as well. I played in bands and things when I was a teenager. Then I went to sort of a traditional conservatoire, and I
was this in Australia?
Okay. First in Australia, yeah, and studied acting and then directing. I studied directing, but then I went to Poland and I worked for many years in a particular kind of work there, trained and then worked in companies as an actor in Poland for quite a few years.
But now
And
you
then
have to first tell me how from Australia to Poland. What took you there? And what about the
well,
language?
well, my father was Polish.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes
But
sense. Yeah.
he went to Australia after the war, and so it was for me. It was a sort of two-pronged thing. One is that I was exploring my roots,
Oh, yeah.
but also I was always very attracted to this particular kind of work that was that Poland was, let's say, famous for.
Okay.
So I went there and kind of trained also in this work, and then was working in various companies there. And then I, excuse me, and then I moved back to the UK, and was, teaching in drama schools. I was directing there. I had a theatre company in London for a while, and I was teaching in various drama schools. But then I encountered this Demidov work, right, and that sort of changed everything for me.
Really?
I was introduced to it by my teacher, Andrei Biziorek of Babel, who's a Russian acting teacher director based in the States, the US now. And he introduced me to this. When I became very frustrated, I reached out to him because he had written a book on a different artist. But I was very frustrated. I felt like I was hitting my head against a wall because in the teaching of acting, I was bringing together various aspects, trying to find my way, right? From my more traditional training to this work I was doing in Poland, and trying to find my own way intuitively through that. But I was very frustrated with why it was so accidental, meaning why did sometimes students connect and sometimes not? Sometimes find inspiration and sometimes not. And as I say, I was very frustrated, and so I reached out to Andrei, and he said to me, "Look, you should take a look at this guy, at Demidov." And when I encountered it, it was like someone turned on a light in a dark room, and it changed everything, because it was everything I was trying to do myself, but somebody had already gone down that path, and really blazed it very thoroughly. And I just felt like I'd come home. So I trained then with Andrei, and we owe him a great gratitude, because he was the one who basically revived this technique. And I trained with him, and then started the studio in London, Demidov Studio London, and then I moved to Vienna in January, and we opened the studio here also. So now we have
recently. Mm-hmm. But how amazing that you immediately felt it or got it, or how do you, that you immediately could understand it and could apply it?
Yeah, because I couldn't immediately apply it. I mean, it takes a lot of training, but I understand. But what I read, it spoke straight to my soul. It spoke straight to the place of lack, straight to the place where I knew something was missing, and it just made sense, and it resonated in me. And I remember just being in tears when I started reading this material. Because it was something bigger. It was about acting, but it was also something bigger, not just about acting, right? There is a spiritual element to it as well, which we don't talk about very much, but it absolutely is there. And as I say, it was just everything I knew it could be, but didn't quite know how to get there. In all of the years of my various trainings, right? Was never completely satisfied. And somebody who had figured out how to access inspiration consistently with some inner technique, right? A psychophysical technique. And so yeah, it felt like a homecoming to me.
Wow.
So then from that point on, I've been, you know, I'm still learning, right? It's like I said, we never stop. But the process has been very satisfying, and it's slow growing because not many people, you know, even to this day have heard of Demidov, and there's reasons for that, right? Political reasons. But it's growing slowly now. More people are. When I first started, you know, I was trying to, you know, I was calling actors saying, "Hey, do you want to come do a workshop in this thing you've never heard of?"
Oh yeah.
And you know, I would get 5 people to come, and you know, so it was a lot of hard graft to get a start in London. But then slowly
Are people in the industry, are they skeptical about things like that? Or you know, is it because it's different that they sort of scared to try it?
Yes. Yeah. Not actors so much.
Okay.
But certain acting teachers, because they've got something to, not everybody obviously, but there's something to protect and defend. And we've been called everything, right? The thing I hear a lot is, "Oh, it's a cult." That Demidov thing is a cult. And which always makes me laugh. But, you know, when you are challenging the orthodoxy of anything, there is always going to be resistance. And you know, Demidov faced that in his time, right? He had to go into self-exile because he dared to disagree with the great man, with the orthodoxy. And, you know, he wasn't allowed to publish anything. Nobody could even speak his name, right? Because it was seen as something kind of decadent and, you know, spiritual. And we're talking about Soviet Russia at this time, right? So you can imagine. And so, you know, he died without having published anything. So it's not surprising that it's been unknown until very recently, when Russian Andrei dug all of the materials out of the archives and published a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it in one volume, and then started to kind of work with the technique himself alongside, you know, put the books together alongside Demidov's assistant, who was still alive at the time.
Oh, wow.
So she sadly recently passed away, but so, you know, he knew that it was going in a good direction. And there are only a few of us, right, in the world. There's only 4 of us who are certified, let's say, to teach this work. So it's because it's a long process, and it takes a certain, not just sensitivity, but ability to understand the approach to pedagogy, and the ability to live in the moment with the actor, and not only, you know, what to say, but more importantly, what not to say.
Oh yeah.
Right. When to shut up, and not what, you know, to know what you know. So tactics are a big part of it, also pedagogical tactics.
But do you find people are skeptical who then come and do a course with you or a session with you, that then suddenly it also then resonates with them?
Yeah, many times.
Really?
Many times. I mean, actors come for different reasons, usually because they're searching for something. But I have had actors who've come to a course with a healthy dose of skepticism, and that's fine. That's fine. But then they see that it works, you know. We don't talk about theory. We don't talk about pedagogy, right, in the classroom, right? Because for Demidov, practice comes first. And we talk about the ideas of the theory much later, but practice first, right? So you do the work and it either works for you or it doesn't, right? More often than not, it does. So whether those actors continue is a different story. And some actors come and they're in the process of searching, so they're trying different things, and that's fine. That's fine. So they will land on what's right for them. And I always say that I'm not, it's not my job, and I don't want to denigrate any other approach. If it works for you, then wonderful. You should do that. Then you don't need us, right? You don't need this work.
Yeah, amazing that you have that. Yeah, so you're not persuading somebody. You just say, this is what we have, and this is how it works.
It's my job to do that.
I like
people
that. Yeah.
Will come or they won't come. But as I say, if you feel what you're doing is working and you like the results, then do that. Then that's great. You have no need for this work. But we are here because we feel there needs to be a change in the way acting is taught. And I'm talking specifically about acting, right? But as you pointed out, Petra, that this can apply to any creative endeavor.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. Now, I speak to many artists, and I can absolutely see where this can, that can apply to all forms of art, really.
Absolutely. And it's a matter of, again, it's a matter of where your heart is, what you want to invest in. And I always come back to that fundamental question: why do you want to do it? Why are you doing this? Now, the answer might just be because I love it. That's enough. That's enough. But if the answer is I want to be rich or I want to be a famous actor, also great. Good luck to you. But this work is not going to be for you.
Yeah, that's true. But Andrei, what are the wishes for you for the future? Where would you like the Demidov, what institution of yours? Where would you like to see it?
Well, I mean, I don't have any grand plans for conquering the world, but I would like my mission really is to get this work as widely known as possible, and to invite as many people as want to do it to do this work. Those people who connect with it, right? As I've said already a few times, it's not going to be for everybody. I'm under no illusions that there's only ever going to be the Demidov technique.
Oh yeah.
However, it is growing organically, this work. More people are hearing about it. Actors are, it's growing through word of mouth, and more people are coming to it. More people are attracted to it because they feel something is missing. And those are the people we want to appeal to, right? At the moment, so there was a lot of interest here in Vienna through also the hard work of my partner in crime here in Vienna in the studio, right? Thomas Weilharter, who's done a lot of work to establish the studio here. And so we decided to, because I was coming to Vienna from London very often to run intensives, and the interest there was so much hunger that I said, okay, let's open a studio. So we did that. So I'm based in Vienna, but I sort of straddle two cities because the London studio is still operational. So I'm traveling back on average once a month to run the work there, because there's no one else, unfortunately, who can teach it, right? So I'm in between the two cities. And, I have a colleague who I trained with who has Demidov Studio Athens in Greece. And we are in constant contact. We are about to, next January, we're running the first Demidov retreat in Poland, which will be a 7-day retreat, which we're hoping will become an annual thing. So we want to create a sense of community, for people who are interested in this work and for people who are disillusioned with other ways of working, and who want to have that space of community, which is very important for me, right? That it's not, because this is not just a job for me. I feel like it's a calling, and eventually I would like to have a group of actors who are thoroughly trained in this work, where we can create an ensemble of actors and start to make work. And then we can point to it and say, "Here, this is it. This is the work." I have also what we call a lab group of actors in London, and we're just starting one here, which is for actors who are really interested in going further into the work, where we meet regularly, right, outside the courses of the studio. So it's basically a research space where we are investigating the work more deeply. So that's happening as well. So there is a lot happening.
Amazing.
And we want to we just want to extend the hand of this work to whomever would like to to come and try it, and to explore who they are as artists.
Yeah, and because you understand what that meant to you, so there must be people also who are looking for that something, that they want that hole to be filled.
Many people. What I just said to you about feeling like it was a homecoming, I hear that so often from actors.
Really?
Yeah. We recently, had a launch party here in Vienna, and it's very touching to hear from actors what the work means to them. Not just about as an acting technique, but there's something else they connect with that opens who they are as human beings, right? Because the work doesn't stop when you leave the studio, right? You start to perceive the world differently. You start to encounter people in a different way with more of a sense of openness. And that's a tiny fraction, right? But just to give you an idea, that there is, it touches people in a way that is very humbling for me, and but also very touching. And that's also, I think, why I love this work so much, because, as I said, it's not just a thing. It goes beyond that. It's about what it means to be a human being, and how and the potential that we have as human beings, not just as performers, but as human beings, to open ourselves to something bigger than our egos.
Well, I really hope and I wish that other artists, not just actors, that they can also find exactly the same in with this way of looking at art and this way of working in art and their art form, and what they are doing. So musicians or dancers, that would be amazing if they could also explore it and see what that brings them, in their field.
Well, it's interesting. I've worked with people from different fields. In London, there was an Indian woman who is who's a dancer in Indian classical dance. She came to do a session with me, and she asked me, she had a project and she wanted to work with the Demidov technique to see how it would affect her her work, right, as a dancer. So we worked over several months together. And it was an interesting process, right? In the beginning, I was a little bit skeptical about it. Not that it couldn't work, but but I didn't know particularly what I might offer. But it was amazing how she found that it gave her much more freedom in her work, even though, you know, this classical Indian dance is very codified, right? Very structured. But that doesn't matter in this work because it's about inner freedom.
Yeah.
And which then gives me more freedom within that structure. Mm-hmm. And that's what acting is. It's freedom within a structure. And we can't have freedom without structure. Mm-hmm. We can have structure without freedom, but not the other way around. Mm-hmm. So it's a fascinating.
That's actually true. Yeah. No, that's true. Mm-hmm. But Andrei, this was so great to talk to you. I when I saw you on Instagram, I thought, how amazing. I mean, I'm not an actress or anything, but I could totally, and I was so interested in knowing more about this because it sounds amazing. And it sounds like really, I think it is the answer for many people who, like yourself, you know, who are looking for something or who feel why there's something missing and this could be it.
Yeah.
But great work you're doing on Instagram.
Thank you very much. And thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation and lovely to meet you, Petra. And thank you for inviting me.
It's a great pleasure. And I hope to one day meet you in person.
Me too. That would be lovely.
But we don't really mind what for, and we wanna feel different. As long as nobody's keeping score, and we wanna get high on another supply. Living so conveniently, and we only wanna protest when it's on trend, and everyone else here agrees. We're still figuring out what we came to remember, feeling like an outlaw. Living in a post-truth era, we're still figuring out what we came to remember. Citizens in an uproar, living through myopic eras. The sun and the sea always work it out. The sun and the sea always work it out.